Hey, everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV. Giro d'Italia stage number 3, done and dusted on the island of Sardinia. And Fernando Gaviria from Colombia and the Quick Step squad was the stage winner and is your new pink jersey wearer. 3 days, 3 different winners, 3 different pink jerseys. Sardinia featured great racing. One day, stage number 2, very tough climbing day, although it turned out to be a bunch gallop. And then it was crosswinds today that defined the race and quick step. Does anybody race the crosswinds better than the quick step squad in professional cycling? I don't think so. Consistently, they are at least represented in the front, if not using the crosswinds to blow races apart. And they did that again today. Bunch of riders in the front, including Max Riqueze and Bob Jungels, setting up the win for Fernando Gaviria. All the other sprinters, Caleb Ewan, who, by the way, won the field sprint for 8th place, Andre Greipel, Roberto Ferrari, etc., all left behind, and that gave Gaviria a formality, more or less, for the sprint win. Rudiger Selig from the Bora squad was second, so Bora continuing to have a very good Giro d'Italia. And the crosswinds, it's hard to describe what racing in the crosswinds is like. You're at your limit, and even though the road is flat, there's no benefit from sitting on the wheel in front of you a lot of times. And so you have to be able to go a lot of times as fast as the group of riders that are rotating in the front, especially when the peloton refuses to go into echelons. Your only hope is to form another echelon if you're not right in the front in the first 5 to 10 to 15 riders, generally speaking, depending on how wide the road is. And what happens is the very strongest riders in the crosswinds get to the front once in a while, not oftentimes, sorry. You'll be lucky enough to be there just as things split apart, but then you still have to be able to go. I mean, the speed is just crazy. And so once the gaps start opening, very few riders can close them down, and consequently, you have big time gaps in the finish. It split up with about 10 Ks to go on today's stage, so not the huge time gaps that it could have been if it had split up earlier. But still, behind the group, it was a 13-second gap to the field. All of our GC contenders were safely in there, except Rowan Dennis, who had a crash just as the crosswinds were splitting up the field. And Rowan Dennis from the BMC squad, one of the pre-race outside favorites, lost 5 minutes and 22 seconds. Stage number 1, it was Stefan Kreuzweg losing 13 seconds, and Ilnur Zakarin lost 20 seconds, being caught behind a crash in the finale. And so Kreuzweg Zakarin was caught behind a split in the field in the closing miles, and same with Kreuzweg. So 20 seconds and 13 seconds for those two riders is not that big of a deal, but 5 minutes and 22 seconds for Rowan Dennis. To quote Max Chiandri, GC is out of the question for Rowan Dennis in this year's Giro d'Italia. But hopefully Rowan can stay in there. His goal was to finish the Giro. There's 2 time trials coming up, and he could most certainly do quite well in those, if not win. Next stage is not till Tuesday. That's up Mount Etna. Raced up Mount Etna in the 1989 Giro. That stage was won by Acacio da Silva, very impressive, in front of some of the greatest climbers of all time. Andy Hampsten, Laurent Fignon, Johnny Bugno, Tony Rominger, Marino Lejarreta, but it wasn't big gaps in the peloton that year. It was a lot closer together. It was a little bit earlier in the race. If I remember correctly, it was stage number 2. We had a team time trial that was a disaster because Sean Yates plowed into a cat, and half of the team fell to the ground. The cat was fine, but RGC was very difficult to recoup after that loss of time, just due to bad luck. And he did wind up third, just over 2 minutes behind Laurent Fignon at the end of the Giro. So no team time trial in this year's Giro, but a tough climb up to Mount Etna. And one Colombian's in the pink jersey at the end of today's stage. On the end of the next stage, I'm going to predict another Colombian in the pink jersey, Nairo Quintana. Besides Kruijswijk, Dennis, and Zacharine, all the GC contenders came off of Sardinia in good shape, but it's going to be a very different picture at the top of Mount Etna on Tuesday. Until then, happy miles out there, everybody, and I hope you're enjoying the Giro d'Italia.